Okay.
Yeah. Wake up. Yeah, really. Are you happy to? Yeah. All right, I think we'll get started. There's a couple of people still to come, but they can sneak in. So welcome to the Open IP in Emerging Technologies seminar. So today we're going to talk about responsible governance of open and democratized emerging technologies. So a little bit about how the more people that have access, hello, come on in, to these really powerful technologies. And for those who haven't been to one of the previous seminars, we're focusing quite a lot on artificial intelligence, synthetic biology, and sort of green renewable technologies, although not solely. There may be other examples that we're bringing in from other areas as well. And so today's theme is really looking at how openness, so freely shared. We've had a couple of sessions talking about what exactly we mean by open. So sometimes it's entirely freely shared, sometimes it's just kind of more available. What role that can have in creating greater agency and freedom for firms and individuals to use these technologies, and kind of maybe how some of the patterns of control might change, and what that means for governing them to make sure that they're used responsibly. And so we've just got a couple of kind of, I think we'll both admit, fairly informal presentations on artificial intelligence from Shahar and synthetic biology from me, just to point out in those two communities a couple of the thoughts that are flying around about how this kind of increased access to technologies like those means we need to maybe rethink some of the governance structures and how different groups are tackling that. And then we'll have a discussion and then some lunch. So that's kind of the set of the procedure for the day. You should all have received, this is our final one of the term, I should say, so you should have received a copy of the list for Lent term. You'll have noticed we have a camera here. This is Raphael, who's joining us from Brazil. Hello. So Raphael was here in person for the first seminar, and since then has been joining in online. And so we are currently streaming this to him, and we're also recording the session. So if you don't want the session to be available, if you just be aware that we're recording the session. So if you would prefer that we didn't then share the recording, if you say something in the session which you then think, I don't want that on the internet, it's okay. We don't have to. It's more so that we can document it afterwards with thorough notes and etc. And so that Raphael has a record. But just to make you aware that it is yeah. So this the other thing that may confuse people is this has several cameras and it will move depending on who is speaking. So hopefully not too much. So Raphael doesn't get, so Laura just laughed and now it's pointing at you. Oh. But it should, so hopefully Raphael won't get too seasick. We also have two kind of extra mics that will help him in the discussion. This worked okay last time. It's a little bit complicated, but it seems to go all right. So just to point out the technology, because it looks a bit weird just sitting there at front. Okay, I guess we can kick off. We've got until about 1:30-ish when food will arrive outside, and so I think both of ours can be fairly brief, and then we can kind of open up the floor for thoughts that you might have around how basically increasing access through technologies that are not as tightly controlled by IP might impact on governance. So I'll pass over to Shahar to give us a brief intro to AI.
So just to gauge a little bit level of the audience, do I need to cover what AI can do today for people who are happy with that?
I think a few words would be good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the deep learning revolution of the last 5 years means that the field exists since the 50s. The aim of the field in general is to have machines do anything that a human intelligence can do, or any intelligence can do. It fairly quickly became concretized into planning, vision, logical decision, and so on. Each of these fields progressed quickly just by imbuing logic into machines. So the peak, say, in the 80s with expert systems, and people realized those are fragile and how to make them robust. And then really machine learning is the phase that we're seeing now. It's coming much more from statistics with very large data manipulation, pattern recognition, so basically automated statistics on very large data sets, it enables you to do things that you couldn't do before, like take an image and tell which of 10,000 categories of things it is, which, coupled with some planning and some smart engineering, gives you thousands of colors. Generating images that look lifelike. Beating top human players at chess and Go, right? I mean, you've heard about all these. These are things that were not possible 5 years ago. So the kind of the field of AI broadly and all of its deep history, but there is kind of the really burgeoning field of machine learning, and within machine learning, the use of deep learning, within deep learning, deep supervised learning, and deep reinforcement learning, which are really the two fields that I'm going to focus today. Key players in this field are mostly corporate research labs, though universities also play a role. So you might know of Google DeepMind. So DeepMind was a British startup that was acquired by Google. Several hundred of research engineers, very, very strongly on publish everything with very short delay from when the research was done, usually directly to archive, so put a PDF on the web. Don't always bother with peer review unless they can make the cover of Nature, which they've done twice, maybe on the way to 3 times. Recently, OpenAI, this was established as a non-profit by Elon Musk in the Bay. Facebook AI research group fell, based in New York, headed by one of kind of the key figures in the deep learning revolution, Yann LeCun. Microsoft Research now has good research labs on this, but there are also big research groups in Canada, partly because historically the Canadian government put money into the research that eventually became the deep learning revolution, when others wouldn't, and many people like it though. Yoshua Bengio is a good example. There's also another unit within Google called Google Play. All of these companies quite strong on going direct to the web with a PDF whenever they make some progress, and they tend to publish code as well. Sometimes other code, sometimes there's actually just a link to the GitHub repository for whatever was done. If there isn't a link to GitHub repository, usually nowadays within days to weeks, there is an implementation of the algorithm created by someone else sitting on GitHub for everyone to access. Very little patenting, if at all, happening in this case. And lots of willingness of corporates to release code freely. Why on earth? So I need to go back a little bit to what does it take to deploy one of these advanced systems. You need an algorithm, and these are now being really shared, and people are competing on kind of eking a little bit more efficiency. You need, for supervised learning, you need a labeled data set, which means here are lots of examples, and here is a label for each example about what it is. If it's a classifier, then to which class does it belong to? If it's a decision, then whether the decision is X or Y. For a lot of benchmarking, there are open data sets that have been created and then made freely available. Historically, there was the MNIST database. You might hear a lot about it. It's just a data set of handwritten digits with a label that tells you what the number is for that image. That was a really big milestone when they got neural networks to solve MNIST and perform basically perfectly, quite direct applications in better OCR, postal service, etc. And then the big step in machine vision after that was ImageNet, which was a cluster. I don't remember how many things. Hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of images, each one with a label of what it is in the image, with 10,000 categories. So a picture of giraffes and particular cars and people and so on. And kind of a big wow moment was when performance on that data set approached and then exceeded human performance. How do you evaluate human performance on this is another fun story, but I won't go into that. And now people realize that you can actually get quite a lot of reputation and citations, people compete on your data set. So there is more of a push to publish these data sets. So issues of privacy come into play here. So you can't take people's personal health data and make a competition out of it unless you anonymize it in some good ways. Kaggle is a platform that has been used by data scientists to train up and compete and allow both non-profits and for-profits to share their data in a properly anonymized way and make a competition of who can best make some inferences about these data sets. And I think that Kaggle is an entryway into a lot of the data science and machine learning that's happening today. So that's another place where there is now a fairly big open sharing marketplace for data sets. This is for supervised learning, and to some extent for unsupervised learning. We just have lots and lots of data and try to find patterns with it. For reinforcement learning, instead, what you need is an environment that your artificial agent can interact with, increasingly get rewards from the environment. So basically, it knows whether its actions are performing well or badly, and then it can learn from its own experience and try to help. And for that, you need a simulator that can give feedback to the agent. So for games, this is super easy. Basically, you take the game, patch it up so that your artificial agent interacts with the game, and then you can just train it, and the score in the game or the outcome, if it's an adversarial game, allows you to train the agent. But you can also think of creating 2D simulators and 3D simulators and define some value function on it, such as get from point A to B quickly without crashing into anything. And if your simulator is good enough, then your agent is going to perform well. And companies have been making those kind of environments open source to allow people to compete on them and perform well on them. So we covered algorithms, we covered data or environment. Well, you can think of an environment as just a tool that allows you to generate an infinite amount of data algorithm. Compute. So compute is one of the areas where there's still a bottleneck in terms of what you can do. You actually need access to fairly advanced, well, not advanced, you can run things on your CPU or your GPU, it's just going to be slow. We're seeing over the last 2 years the emergence of dedicated hardware to train algorithms. Google's TPUs, central processing units, and now there are maybe 12 of these coming online. Google's CPU are proprietary. I don't know if they have patented them, but they definitely don't sell them. They don't even disclose information about how they run, just about the performance, but they would enable you to list them on the cloud offering. And I expect similar things will come from Microsoft and Amazon. So this is one way to make money within this field, is get people excited about the technology and then have them pay to access your specialized hardware. It's also a way of exerting some control. It also means that there's actually a barrier to entry because you need to shell out quite a lot of money for, say, an NVIDIA machine with lots of GPUs that allows you to compete and train an algorithm and submit. It also creates a problem for replication. Now, in principle, you could do these things with a home GPU. It will just take you weeks to train something that competing labs can do in a day or several hours. In principle, this is all you would need. In practice, what we also see is the emergence of platforms that massively speed up the rate of creating new algorithms, testing them, training them, and diffusing new capabilities that have been created within the community. So these are just software packages that kind of both come pre-packaged with already trained algorithms on some environment and kind of nice packages that wrap a lot of complexity of the algorithms underneath. So you don't need to understand all the mathematics behind the convolutional neural network or a long short-term memory network. You can just import LSTM from whatever, set a few parameters based, say, on a YouTube video, and you're good to go. Which means that we've seen lots and lots of people with no background in, well, very little background in CS and no background in machine learning, or the statistics that is behind those models, training and deploying those kinds of things, including, quite recently, white hat hackers. So the big report that we're working on at the moment in the center, that's a very big collaboration, including with input from OpenAI and DeepMind, as well as of other experts, about the potential for misuse of this technology, because it is something that's been relatively neglected in the field. Right? The main narrative coming from both industry and academia is it's going to be wonderful and amazing and transformative, and it probably will be all of these things. But there is also scope for misuse. There's scope for misuse in cybersecurity, scope for misuse in political security. We talk a lot about autonomous weapon systems, so there are lots of other physical systems out there that you could use an AI to either it will have some machine learning on board and you can kind of trick it or hack it or cause it to end up in a bad state. And political security. Right? We're seeing more and more targeted manipulation, go for quite extreme and invasive surveillance. These conversations are only just now starting within this domain. Our report has a bunch of suggestions. These suggestions come also from practitioners in the field, and practitioners in the field are going to be signing on as co-authors of the report. And we're calling for things like learning from the cybersecurity community, who's been handling kind of dual use and misuse of software more generally for a while now, and have developed quite a lot of sensible best practices. Through publication risk assessment, currently people rush to publish. Sometimes people give some consideration to how the technology might be misused, but that's an aberration rather than the norm. We would really like to see the norm, and also people just choose not to publish some stuff. Maybe have some regimes of either licensing your technology so that not everyone can use it, or providing it as a service so that people can freely have access to the capability without being able to train it on their own data set and use it. Face recognition would be a good example. Right? There have been fairly advanced face recognition capabilities as part of Facebook offering, for example, for a while now, I think with the acquisition of Face.com, but there aren't readily available. I can just download this and be able to recognize any face within any picture, unless I go through Google's API, through Facebook's API. And now increasingly through other companies. But there's not something that's just open access that I can download. This may change in the near future, but at the moment it's the case. And we can think about similar models of the technology, that a capability that's very dual use just becomes offered as a service rather than as a fully open platform. Yes. That concludes my very quick survey. I'm happy to take questions.
I do. So the very second to last point you made about sort of semi-restricted model of accessing a service like face recognition through Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So then that puts Facebook as a gatekeeper.
Yes.
Is that wise? Or how are people in the field thinking about who those gatekeepers are and who gatekeeps the gatekeepers?
Right. So, I mean, of course, there's kind of general discussion, but I don't think there's a specific discussion about who should be the gatekeepers, then because there hasn't been very much discussion about the need for gatekeeping. Currently, we're just getting to the point of maybe saying some gatekeeping would be better than no gatekeeping. Yeah. I mean, the norm and kind of the mimetic environment in the field right now is publish everything, publish early, democratize the technology, and reduce barriers to access. You can see it in Coursera courses, you can see it in these platforms that everyone is pushing very hard on people, with the fact that everyone is sharing code and trained models. The fact there is very little, I mean, from idea to proof of concept, to paper on archive, to someone replicating on GitHub, to me being able to do the same thing in TensorFlow or Keras or PyTorch, could be days. Days is extreme because this is still finicky. But weeks is not unreasonable. And for really big breakthroughs, maybe months. So how long before we get something that's really quite dangerous and just gets put up there? Unknown, but I would say not very far. And so having some gatekeeping over no gatekeeping is a good stopgap. And then we can discuss whether we want private corporates versus governments versus academia to be the gatekeepers. A good thing about corporates is that they have probably the best cybersecurity at the moment today. And of course, if you hack a system, then you get access to the code, and you can So you get access to the capability, so you want this, whoever is guarding it, to have this very good cybersecurity. Also, corporations care about playing legally. They will cut corners where they can, but they will not do things that are grossly illegal because it will prevent them from doing business, which is not the case for rogue actors.
What other defenses do you see other than restricting? What are the other things? What are the other options?
Floats. So restricting access, of course, creating defensive technologies. So we generally don't know whether some of these things will be hard to defend, will be hard or easy to defend against, because most of these problems just haven't been around for very long, so we haven't tried creating technical solutions for. I mean, people are working now on creating algorithms that will enable you to identify and restrict fake news. And same with other things, it may be easy to solve. I wouldn't bet on it being easy to solve, but that's a possibility. We talk in the report quite a bit about ethics and norms and framing. So if you have the skills required, then you can choose to do something beneficial or choose to do something malicious, as long as you might just choose to do something beneficial because it's more fun and profitable and other people are giving you rewards for it. So shaping the incentive structure. Law enforcement is terrible in cybersecurity in general, in data manipulation in general, because these things require quite sophisticated technical knowledge and because they require international collaboration. Two things that it just requires everyone to be on the same quite high level and willing to cooperate with each other. And geopolitics and difficulties with the judiciary and difficulties with lots of other things that come in the way. Also difficulties with nation states wanting to maintain an offensive capability mean that this is not always easy. So if I'm currently a hacker somewhere in East Europe, I will probably not get arrested. If I do something, and that will probably translate if I use a machine learning model to do what I did before. So changing the landscape on that would be good, but very hard. Restricting hardware or monitoring hardware might be another option, but that's very extreme. At the moment, we consider chips to be something that everyone should have access to, right? The evolution of computing created lots of wealth, created lots of increases in productivity, very much a democratizing technology, either putting limitations on that or regulating it too heavily or just monitoring it would be considered, I think, by a lot of people as being very invasive, also very hard to do. If you just look at the distribution of compute in the world at the moment, all of people's base stations have more compute in them than all of Google and Facebook put together wholly by several orders of magnitude. Now you might say with these new chips coming online, this is going to change, and it's going to get just dedicated hardware. Open question about whether that's going to be feasible or not. But hardware and data versus algorithm and people might be the places you can intervene more readily, but they are all hard.
I have a question related to the international cooperation I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of quite sweeping discussion, I would say, at the moment about a new global governance mechanism, especially around shared ethics and values. How realistic or useful do you think that narrative is?
Well, I'm biased because I participate in this narrative. I would say useful but not realistic.
Okay.
Oh, I think it's going to be very, very, very hard to get right.
Yeah.
But even if you don't get it right, you create soft norms and you influence people's incentives. I think there are lots of actors in this space who want to consider themselves as being good actors, who care a lot about the brand, who foresee big backlashes when technology gets misused, particularly if they're leaders. Not just in this, but lots of emerging technologies. And so going to all of these conferences and saying how we want this to be a beneficial technology and publishing vague and innocuous statements, I think is good. I think it would be really nice to add some teeth to a lot of these. Maybe not in the current geopolitical climate, maybe in a decade. We'll see.
Who do you think the stakeholders need to be?
Well, hopefully everyone. We're also calling for expanding the list of stakeholders that are engaged. I think motions like the IEEE are very good. I think the partnership on AI, which is an industry corporation, is good. Could be done better, have difficulties. Definitely needs more partners outside of the West or the global North, but that would be hard to do. But I think we have some leftover problems that are kind of easier problems in a way, like cybersecurity. And we haven't gotten very far on that, partly because the incentive for lots of nation states is to maintain their own offensive capabilities. And we need to start cracking those nuts because we're creating a backlog of problems.
Thanks. You mentioned licensing as an option for documenting. What's the people's feelings on whether that will actually work? Given that if your ethics are such that you see the misuse is not a problem, then kind of not adhering to licensing restrictions.
True. So I think licensing gives you another deterrent or punishment tool, another tool in your toolbox. And some people might say, well, as long as if no one told me not to do it, then I'm fine to do it, versus, oh, people said I shouldn't do it. Maybe that's a little bit more of a hindrance. It's also about changing the norm, right? So making people think about misuse and malicious use partly comes through major actors saying, oh, I think there is a big problem here, I'm going to slap a license.
I was just thinking maybe also more visible, so you know who you've licensed to at least. And so I don't really know the scenarios, but whether it helps with traceability and monitoring.
Good. It depends on how you check your license.
And how open that nature is, because risk for licensing is not at all clear. For example, one of the other technologies I've issued that for.
I was just going to say it's not too dissimilar from biotechnology. I mean, who's going to do the licensing? Who's going to oversee it? At least in the biotech world, they're trying to implement codes of conduct, professional conduct, norms of behavior, and try to appeal to people's best behavior rather than trying to implement some governmental-wide system, because there really is no governmental-wide system to oversee this. So all one can hope for is codes of conduct.
So two questions about it. One is, do these codes of conduct have teeth? Like, is there anything about...
Well, does anything have teeth?
But do they even stipulate what should be done in case someone transgresses against the code? Or are they just about, you should do X, Y, and Z, but not, if you don't, why?
It's more the latter of, like do no harm.
Okay.
Professional standards, and hoping to appeal to, people's sense of right versus wrong. But you're right. I mean, there really is no enforcement mechanism, if you will. Certainly not in biotech, and certainly I think with IT as well.
And I guess the second one to follow up with, what does the talent pipeline look like? Because in machine learning, it used to be that you needed a PhD in order to create anything useful, right? And so we kind of knew you would be in one of the universities, probably one of the top universities, if you're going to be very dangerous. We have several years to get at you. You're probably on some register somewhere. This is no longer the case. Any of you can decide today that you're going to deploy a machine learning module that does something useful in the world, and I can guarantee you that a month from now you will be able to do it. You don't need to be on any system. So I think that changes quite a bit the usefulness of code of conduct.
Right. Well, it's like do-it-yourself biology. You can open up a lab in your garage and, develop CRISPR technology to do genetic engineering on whatever microbe you want.
Just ask a question about risk. little bit about like, you said a bit about impact, and likely the issue, but what is the issue with what kind of impact?
Very large uncertainty about this. Okay, let's take the three domains one at a time. Cybersecurity. So there's a saying that says dumb hackers attack systems and smart hackers attack people, right? If you get an email that appeals to your ego, your professional interest, that has been casted directly to you, and you click it, and it actually leads to a malicious page that that has fooled you into giving away your username and password, then kind of everything that you run on could be totally secure and formally verified and passed and tested to the extreme, and your system has still been compromised, and someone has access to your information, possibly quite important information like money, health. If you're working for a big corporation, then IP. If you're working for the state, then maybe launch code. Probably not launch code, but if you layer before that, and there's quite a lot of access. At the moment, there's a very big trade-off. You can either send Nigerian print spam to 1 billion people, of which not 1%, my number would click the link, but you're still able to make a profit. Kind of depends how cheap compute is and how many insecure computers are out there that you can misuse for your own purpose. Or you can spend a lot of time studying someone, crafting a profile targeted at them, with much higher likelihood that they will click the link, but it's just an investment. Like you need to pay someone to drink coffee and browse the web to do this. If you can train machines to do that, then imagine launching 1 million highly targeted of those phishing attempts. So this is automated spear phishing. It's the name for this kind of attack. And I mean, we're already seeing lots of harm being done with not very sophisticated attacks. Say the WannaCry ransomware attack compared to quite a lot of damage created by sophisticated attacks. So if you think of Stuxnet, or if you think of the attack on Ukrainian power grids, and there are other examples that people know less about. Imagine that you get the scale of the former with the potency of the latter. We think this is plausible up to defenses, and we are highly uncertain about how quickly defenses will be deployed or how easy it will be to deploy. So that's fun.
So
Yeah.
do you think that the AI could be used to identify zero-day vulnerability in those systems?
No, I'm saying that AI could be used to pick targets and craft messages that look appealing to those targets without human involvement. I think finding 0 days is also a possibility. It's much less likely. Though you could probably get some speed up for the teams who are searching for 0 days. So probably Centaur models where you have a bunch of systems and with imitation training or with automation of some of the tasks that Black Hats do, you just get a speed up in the number of 0 days you can discover. But with phishing, you could probably get faster speed up to this, right? You can have a look at someone's online profile and automatically craft a message to them that has much higher likelihood of being clicked on than just something. Than 0 day discovery. Maybe that's enough.
I went to a talk last 2 weeks ago from a person who runs an organisation called Bellingcat, and he was working in a bank and got very interested in Syria, the conflict in Syria, and started in his spare time kind of tracking down social media photos of soldiers in Syria and tracking back where weapons had come from. Basically, kind of in his spare time, just with images from accounts, became basically an expert in Syrian arms trade. And now kind of left his job and worked with Guardian, he worked with groups in the US,
And Bellingcat kind of, from a group of basically internet hobbyists, became a formal organisation, but they also still use people who have other jobs and they just kind of spend their time. And he was talking about what AI could potentially do there, and he's incredibly worried because the amount of stuff that they managed to find just through manual sifting through and tracking back to, I mean, some of it's incredible. Like there were some jihadist terrorists were posting images, kind of written notes in front of cameras of where they lived, which basically said what country they were in, and they managed to track down the exact corner of the street in Munster where this photograph had been taken, because Germany keeps an entire register of all advertising polls, so they knew which city it was, and they could work out from that database, and Google Maps and Google Earth exactly where he'd been standing, assuming he'd taken the photograph. And so like these kind of things, they just link up together, and he's kind of in lots of talks where kind of AI students have been interested in training something to do that. But the type of thing that they managed to do was basically locate almost all of the battalion that were involved in or allegedly involved in the MH17 missile shooting. And they did that entirely from social media available information, because Russian soldiers love posting selfies. And Russian media also loves posting videos of the Russians and the bases, and so they managed to track back where vehicles have been, who belong to what, even vehicles that have been painted over coming into Ukraine, and then taken back into Russia and not entirely painted back over again. And so they kind of tracked all these things. And he was kind of really, really interested in the potential of AI to do some stuff like that. And he felt like it was quite close, and he was very worried. Going back to what you were saying about the security idea, that it's impactful to have those capabilities of image recognition.
So I've talked mostly about cybersecurity, digital security, but also physical security, of how AI will affect warfare, and AI being used to undermine cybersecurity systems, but also political security, right? You can, the same way you can craft an email to someone to get them to disclose their login details, you might craft a message to someone that sways the way they are going to vote, also participation in other institutions.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I've seen a TED talk recently about somebody that calls a techno-sociologist, that she is saying something about the dangers of artificial intelligence, but not like you pointed misuse, intentional misuse, and she's pointing to non-intentional misuse. Like when you ask algorithms to make choices for us, and we ask for a certain outcome, it will give us the probabilistic good results, but without looking for the moral issues that are related, that are underneath this question. So I'm sharing here on the talk, on the chat, the link to this talk that I think is really good to complement what has been said today, and I think it should be looked.
Absolutely right. So I should have mentioned that I was talking just about AI and security. There's also an adjacent field of AI and safety. Both in the short term and in the long term, it's highly problematic. There are some assurances that we need about those systems that we just don't have at the moment, but it's not stopping us from deploying them or progressing very fast in the capabilities. It would be really nice to change that dynamic. It's beginning to change. Again, some of the big players in the field have dedicated AI safety teams. The same kind of frameworks that have been discussed and algorithmic approaches are also being pushed. I think a paper from DeepMind came out yesterday or 2 days ago about here are sample environments where current best practice algorithms do not behave safely, and we would need a new class of algorithms to behave more safely on these particular environments as a way to ratchet up in the same way you ratcheted up on image classification. You can now measure the outcome safety, which would be really nice. But it definitely has a lot of catching up to do in terms of how many people are working on your capabilities versus how many people are working on securing or ensuring the safety of things that already exist.
Well, I'm going to follow a bit onto the DIY buyer thing. Very brief introduction to that space, which is where, much like AI really, that some quite advanced technologies are making their way out of labs and what used to be pretty well-resourced university and industry labs into much more informal spaces. How the discussion about safety and governance in that space has played out over time, and this is still quite, I don't know in terms of age how newer phenomenon this is, although interestingly, kind of since around 2009, there's been an increase in the number of communal spaces. So biohacker labs, DIY biolabs, community labs, whatever you want to call them, but basically spaces outside of formal institutions where people use biotechnology, and specifically genetic engineering is the technology that's kind of been most talked about as a potential concern, but also obviously potential for innovation and benefits. Well, I think it does go back a lot further than that, and there's a really interesting paper which I encourage anyone to read from Helen Ann Curry, who's in the History and Philosophy of Science department here, which is called Garden Biotech, Garage Biotech, and kind of draws a line between this idea that, although despite what the media might kind of talk about as being a novel concept, the idea of quite advanced technologies moving out of scientific and industry labs and into people's everyday practices are actually, it's not a new thing. And in the early 20th century, particularly in America, there was great interest in X-ray and radiation as for mutation plants. And these technologies moved out of the physical industries and into the biological industries. And there's this kind of idea across quite a lot. I think they even have a lab at Bell Labs to look at one of the other ones, but maybe one of the others, but certainly one of the larger industries, innovation labs, to look at if you could make evolution to order in plants. They thought if you could just somehow direct the X-rays in the right way, you'd end up with a kind of vegetable you'd crafted, essentially, that you could kind of, control this mutation technology. It turns out that's not true. It's very difficult to do and doesn't really work at a biological level. And so now, interestingly, we are coming to the point where we can almost create evolution to order with much more precise genetic engineering technologies now. But back then they were trying. And so there's actually a thriving kind of letter writing and article stream among amateur horticulturalist magazines where they were using radioactive X-rays to mutate plants in the hope that they'd kind of create the next amazing agricultural variety that would either bring them a lot of money or just that they get kudos from their horticultural friends. And so, yeah, it's interesting. She's got loads of snippets of magazines and articles, including advice on going to your chemist to get hold of some radioactive isotopes, which back then was possible, and also instructions that if you couldn't get hold of that, all you wanted to find was a nice glow-in-the-dark pocket watch and just scrape the dial, and that would give you enough radium to be getting on with. And people used to send these off to national labs as well. In fact, there were even companies that pre-irradiated them and sold them in packets, like a lucky dip. So anyway, it's interesting. So it's not new that some of these more advanced technologies have also come out of labs and into the home or people's kind of day-to-day environments. But now they have got somewhat more powerful, even if the actual doing of the protocol is probably slightly safer than playing around with radioactive isotopes. And so now we're looking at around 40 of these community lab spaces in the US, probably a similar number around Europe. There are currently 4 in the UK, but only one of those has a license to do genetic modification. And so, and progressively people have been getting kind of better at doing stuff. They're doing some successful projects. They are entering into competitions like the International Genetic Machine Competition, which historically has been groups of undergraduates steering bacteria usually to do something interesting. We've had various talks over time, and recently about this with arsenic biosensing, for example, and so on. Many IGEM teams have looked at heavy metal sensing in bacteria, and some of those projects
have then gone on to be developed further and even made in. So I'm just going to give a quick run through of some of the sort of the results that came out, some of the concerns, and then some of the results that came out, the most detailed information we have, which admittedly now is somewhat out of date. There was my bio, mostly in the US in 2013, and then published a report around kind of, well, they would have mixed some realities about, what about bio, but most of them are around safety and governance. So I'll just kind of relate to the results from that. Then there's now interest in redoing that survey for 2017, or whenever they manage to get the funding to do it. And also some funding going into the field, for example, to put biosafety officers embedded within some of these labs to look at their practices. But so I guess many of the points I was going to make as the introduction kind of come out in Charles' talk anyway, just that, the idea is really that in the bioengineering space as well, the technologies are becoming slightly more abstractive and having to understand everything about biology in the same way that the algorithms for AI are kind of, don't need to necessarily understand all of this piece of science or statistics in order to deploy them. We also have a trend towards platform technologies, also things like cloud labs, so you can outsource a lot more of the work. You don't need to do it necessarily in your own space. That means that you can kind of, you might not have the capacity to sequence the DNA, but someone else does, and it's much more accessible to send that to outsource those types of processes. And so we are, I think, seeing bioengineering very slowly, more slowly than the hopes of media would have you do, becoming more accessible to people. But when we say more accessible to people, I mean, primarily it's the US and Europe where we see this trend. I mean, it's places where people have disposable income, they have disposable time, and they're kind of getting together to set up these labs. When you look at who's actually doing it, it's majority people with at least 20% of people in the 2013 survey had PhDs, and many of those PhDs would have been in biology. So it isn't the idea that everyone can do it and everyone is doing it is just not true. The majority of the population of biohackers are trained at some level, and almost all of them have a higher education degree, or at least kind of post-secondary education. And many have a background in STEM. So they're also typically engineers or software engineers, have some kind of technology training, and predominantly male. That's the kind of status quo in that particular grouping at the moment. And so, the idea is that by this democratization in terms of access to technology, and also through bringing down the costs, actually, so a lot of the groups will share open source designs for scientific hardware, because the proprietary models are quite expensive, even though actually the technology that underlies them is usually quite old and not really under patent. I mean, a lot of the basic tools that you use in the lab, IP is not the barrier to actually getting hold of those things. There are obviously always improvements, but if you want to do a PCR reaction, which is where you take some DNA and make many copies of it by basically pulling it down, you can, and they used to do that in 3 different temperature water baths and just move the samples between them. And you can actually do that, you can just get something that dips automatically, would be the next logical step. But actually to buy the devices, which are obviously designed to be fast, it's very expensive for the kind of money that these groups have. And so they're really kind of going back to those principles. So someone was telling me the other day, they visited Magenta, and they're actually redoing the water bath technique, but with like a gigantic roll of bubble wrap essentially, and they're dunking it in the water bath, and each bubble has a reaction in it, and they're doing millions of reactions at once, which is quite interesting. Anyway, so the idea is that doing bioengineering is expensive, but there are ways to make it much cheaper, and this group are exploring that. And so the kind of the potential positive impact is that you have groups that are coming at it from a different viewpoint and a different mindset, and could potentially create innovations in the hardware or the engineering space that are novel. You've also got the idea of kind of more people understanding the technology and learning with it in the community outside of formal education, because really once you leave formal education, there is no, other than these spaces, there is nowhere to learn about that type of technology, whereas for AI and other types of computer technologies, you do have this proliferation of online courses and kind of mentoring groups, and you do see that with molecular biology, but not the practical side. If you're not kind of practically implementing, you're not creating anything in the same way that you could create your own implementation of an AI algorithm. So there is a kind of a narrative of innovation, a narrative of scientific engagement and lifelong learning that comes out of the spaces, and also a kind of commercial innovation thing as well. There's a big, I think part of the reason that Helen's paper was Garden Biotech, Garage Biotech, is that Garage Biotech comes out a lot in these articles because it's really the kind of Silicon Valley of the idea that all of these companies came out of garages and people were hacking away in their bedrooms, and so that's the vision that it kind of puts across it. It's the same thing in speech technology translated into biotech, which again is not actually true when you look at how people are operating, but that's the way it's and so from the DIY Bio survey that was done in 2013, on the back of all these articles about, and quite kind of scaremonger articles about the kind of lone biohacker in their bedroom, genetic engineering pathogens, major biosecurity or biosafety implications. I found that the garage biohacking image was largely a myth, and only 8% of people who responded to them actually had home labs. The rest, the other 92%, were working in these community environments, which are typically in kind of either in universities, but not necessarily part of the university, or they're in community centres, or they're just some people have got together and found a space. And so yeah, very few people working at home. And the point that they raised about the communal spaces is that most of them are quite small. So by necessity, it's fairly transparent what you're doing in there. If people are using the shared space, it's quite difficult to do something that is going to take several weeks and months to run the type of experiment that you need to do to produce anything of concern without someone buttoning on that you're not doing what you should be doing. Also, the idea that people could get to that stage of technical capability was certainly not true in 2013. Again, it's changing now, and I think we're seeing more success coming out. But a lot of the headlines at that time were about people creating these viruses that we should really be worried about, re-engineering stuff. And you know, most people were still learning the basics. And in fact, only half of people that they interviewed had put any DNA into anything living. Most of that was a kind of fluorescent protein, for example, into a bacteria, which is basically the first step. And many of those, they didn't dig down into the details, but many of those half probably did that on a supervised training course, because that's pretty much the kind of the entry point into this technology for most people. And so, as they put it, it was almost like with the kind of when you talk about DNA as lines of code and programming the operating system, very few people are writing their own code, for one thing. And even where they're taking bits of code from other people, actually deploying them and implementing them is also not very common. So I think they're kind of behind potentially AI in that respect. I already mentioned at 19 doctoral degree, and the other concern was that people were sort of running off and doing what they wanted with no regard for regulation that already existed or for safety. Obviously, this is biased because people have they answered the survey, so they clearly have an interest in the community. But as a community in general, and there are always going to be some outliers to that, it has had a fairly responsible and proactive attitude to self-governance is the pattern that's come across from various cities, and that, you know, in the United States particularly, there was very early engagement with law enforcement. The FBI ran meetings and participates in meetings, goes to spaces and attends the International Justice and Machine Conference, and has a very visible presence in that space. I mean, that was the FBI kind of made that happen. I mean, it wasn't, I don't think, but the DIY Bio people went to the FBI, said, we want you to look at what we're doing. But still, they did at least engage in the process, and there have been many, many meetings between members of that community, in particular one where the European community and the US community, or the heads of the labs that existed at that time, came together to come up with a code of ethics, DIY bio, which interestingly was slightly different between Europe and the US. But those two exist, and again, there's kind of an interest now in going revisiting those and saying, are they still fit for purpose, given that the field has developed, there are more labs now, there's a kind of more diversity community. And so there has been engagement on reasonably proactive self-governance. And I think the argument that's been made by several people who've worked in this field and are themselves optimistic and positive about the ability of the community to quite reasonably self-govern are that, you know, if you contrast, what you're really asking is what is the added risk of this type of person working with this type of technology compared to the people who already work with this type of technology in industry and academia. That's really the kind of that gap where there's most interest, because there is risk to this technology per se inherently, regardless of who's working on it, and you know I think that's the gap between the two is probably where the attention needs to focus specific groups. And it was interesting, I thought, that Shahar brought up pre-screening of publication, because that comes up. I mean, most of the time when something is really, really controversial in biology, it's either already been published or it is about to be published. I mean, Catherine said far more on H5N1 and flu research, and that kind of, you know, should we be publishing this? Shouldn't we be publishing this? We should have access to this information. But that debate happens quite late, or has happened quite late in the past. That's a true statement.
Yeah. Well, certainly the things that come to attention are the ones.
Yeah. And more recently, there's been a lot of debate on gene drive. So these are systems where you can engineer a genetic element that is designed to spread very quickly within populations. So Mendelian inheritance generally says 50% of the offspring of a parent will get a particular gene. You can engineer a gene drive that will go into more than 50%. So you very quickly find it kind of spreading. And this has again been, but this debate, and the National Academy had a big workshop and series of reports, series of workshops and reports. That happened after someone has already published an implementation of the gene drive in Drosophila flies. And that was when people started asking, should we really be doing this? Is this really concerned about this? And now, of course, it's big that because you can implement gene drive, same technologies that are already kind of accessible to other groups, there's lots of interest in what can happen there. Gene drives, I think, get particular attention because they have the capacity to spread within populations. So population organisms aren't restricted to one country, so it does, well, there's multiple reasons why people are based in it, but I think also this transnational idea that if one gene drive was kind of released into a population, mosquitoes, for example, don't respect country borders, and so, you know, there's an international governance issue with that. So I think there's a question of whether the current governance that we've got going on within biotechnology anyway is sufficient, and then additionally there's this question of what are the additional needs of these more informal communities or communities outside formal. Accidents and environmental release also come up quite a lot as worries in the communities. It's worth pointing out that most of the labs are containment level 1, which means, or in the US biosafety level 1, which means that they shouldn't knowingly have anything in space that is pathogenic. And they're not allowed to use human cells. Human cells having human pathogens grow within them if they get contaminated. And so that's one mitigation for accidents and environmental releases. Also, the US and UK regulations are very, very different. So in the US, you can genetically engineer stuff anywhere. If we were in the US and we wanted to genetically engineer something right here, right now, that would be not against the law. Whereas in the UK, we couldn't, because this building is not a notified premises with the health and safety. And so there are quite different regulations about this as well. And so that's pretty typical around Europe. But you do see, interestingly, things like in Germany, there was a recent case of import of a kit containing CRISPR, a gene editing tool, it was essentially banned from being imported because, not because of the CRISPR actually, but because the bacteria that were shipped with the kit were found to contain pathogenic bacteria. It was reported by a kind of regional government that they contained these pathogenic bacteria. But that led to a kind of headline, and then there was another headline about how Germany banned biohackers. And the entire story was basically that Germany says biohacking not allowed outside of federal kind of registered labs, which was always the case. It was always the case that you couldn't do it outside of registered labs in Germany, but it was more like German government said law is still the law, don't break it kind of thing. But you do get these kind of conflicting information on what is allowed and what isn't allowed. And actually in Europe and the UK, it is not allowed unless you're registered, and they have, you have to provide evidence that you have sufficient risk assessment procedures in place, that your lab is suitable for doing the work and importantly for decontaminating. So there's an extra sort of step to go through, but that again not so much the case. And as I mentioned, there's one space in London that already received approval from HSE, and other groups around Europe that have done the same thing with the various things. So there's been no recorded environmental release from these labs. And again, although these they don't completely mitigate the risk, there are several procedures in place that make it less likely that it would be a problem. And so in the sort of sixth area is intentional harm. The worries go back to the previous comments about creating viruses or something bad that get out into the environment. We've already talked about that really being kind of beyond the expertise and techniques of the typical DIY biologist, which is not to say that some people in these labs could not. And there are probably PhD qualified biologists who are using the lab. But the majority of those are involved because they want to teach other people how to do science. Those that they're wanting to create their own viruses. And the experiments are very expensive, time-consuming, and often beyond the means of the individuals or community. But that is going to be changing slowly, and that just helps maybe control of access to things. I think there's far more control of access in the biotechnology space than it sounds like there is in the AI space. That actual companies will not send you stuff often unless they think that you're a reputable company or a biotech company or in fact a university. So there are extra steps that you have to go through. And so I think that there is a time for reflection has been marked as the point at which you can print DNA on demand basically, and we're not at that point yet. So the minute you can send off and get DNA sent back to you, but most of the major companies that do that have signed up to I can't name it, basically a kind of set of rules by which they screen for pathogenic sequences. It doesn't always work, and people have kind of shown that they can get sequences back that they shouldn't do in some cases. But the idea is that we're kind of putting the regulation onto the corporations to make sure, on the companies to make sure that they're not sending out dangerous DNA unless that person has kind of authority to be handling it. If you try to send an order to one of these smallpox virus, it wouldn't necessarily come back to you. Is the idea. That's the theory. But we are at some point in the future, people are going to be able to do that in the lab themselves for not very much money, and that's the point at which I think it will be a time. Yeah.
Sorry, can I ask a question? Particular, and Bashara, I'm sorry I came late and I missed your the first part of what you were talking about. But I was wondering, and I apologize because I don't know too much about software really, but these kind of import restrictions or kind of restrictions that certain, I mean, we know this also about probably kind of in the nuclear industry where certain documents must not be released into the public and so on. How is that actually in the software community or industries, or are there any external regulations that specifically restrict the release of certain software codes? Does something like this exist, or is that more on a case-by-case basis?
For machine learning, it doesn't exist. There are examples of this historically in software, but maybe let you finish and then I can take the question.
Just as exports,
Yeah.
I do. So yeah, if you're selling crypto products, then yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also for some kind of system penetration systems and code, there are export restrictions. So they are in Rationale, and there's a lot of literature about how it's terrible and unenforceable, and creates much more harm than good. But yes, historically, the crypto world are a good reference for that. But in machine learning, these don't exist, at least yet.
Well, isn't there an empirical problem there too? If a group decides not to release something, they're not going to announce that they've not released it. You can't see what isn't available.
Absolutely.
So I, from a legal point of view, what there's even statutory and things like that. But if a group decides not to release something that's exhausted.
Yeah, we're talking about distribution rather than development.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's not bringing that up. If you decide not to distribute something and keep it to yourself, nobody knows.
Oh, so you don't know that it does work.
If you don't know what you did. So, I'm sure there would be heaps of machine learning code out there that people just choose not to share. And groups of
For
people.
different motives.
Yeah, and commercially, as well as, there's various things that are developed in NASA, by the fact that NASA has a very big open source desire, things to share.
True. I think we've got into you. So we can figure something.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm more just yeah, that was pretty much it. So I think I've just run through very basically some of the kind of things that come up, very surface level. So feel free to. But I think it's an interesting community to look at in terms of needing to kind of construct some norms. And between a group that previously didn't have access to a technology, and the way that they're going about it is quite interesting to watch. I think sort of the community labs that are engaged, then there's really minimal. So all the ones that we know about and are engaged in the process, it seems reasonably minimal risk that anything serious can happen in those labs. Most of them have strict rules about lab accessibility. Certainly if they're in the UK and Europe, they have to in order to have permission to do any GM work. It's quite difficult to remain anonymous and secretive in these small spaces and communities. And also, because they're often designed to be lower biological safety levels, there's not really any protection for you in doing a dangerous experiment in those labs. So, for example, if you were a person who wanted to deliberately produce a virus that was infectious, it's going to get you first. And so it's not really, in terms of if you have any self-preservation, you probably find another lab to do it in. Having said that, and so I think all of those things combined to give us a reasonable mitigation of several risks, but not complete mitigation of all risks. Some labs in the US are now thinking of going to biosafety level 2, and it's an interesting conversation that they're having, because the reason they want to do it primarily is because they're interested in working with human cell lines. Some of them are interested in working with cell lines. They're not interested in pathogens, or at least they're the ones that are kind of coming out publicly. But they're not coming out publicly and saying that they want to go to biosafety level 2. They're having little kind of meetings at other meetings and being very quiet and considered about how to do it and what the communication will be with the media and with other groups before they go ahead and do that. I mean, it's not a complete secret, I would argue, but there's not kind of been a public statement and everyone's grouping together to talk about how you would communicate those risks more well to avoid kind of backlash. But it's really difficult to regulate against individuals. So while the community labs as a group are doing all of this proactive work, it's not to say that there are not individuals who could take this technology and work with it in ways that we don't want them to do, and I think that's the same as any technology, including AI and others. For example, pretty sure for the next month, anyone that does any interview regarding biological engineering is going to have to answer questions about Desire Dana, who's a person in the US who recently injected himself with a self-injection DIY thing, which came up
several of us were involved in a bioengineering horizon scanning paper, which was recently published, and we had a press briefing, and then I had a follow-up interview with BBC Radio 4, and they played the audio clip of Josiah doing his injection just before I had my interview about democratization of synthetic biology. And so, yeah, so there's a lot of questions coming out along those lines of how do we work with individuals. What do you think? What should we do about individuals who use technology? I mean, in that case, he was injecting himself. It was non-infectious. It's not a safe practice to self-inject. That type of system, he was targeting his myostatin gene, which is supposed to increase production of muscle. I mean, from a scientific point of view, all of the papers were saying, all of the papers in the media were talking about first person to genetically engineer themselves, which is not proven because no one's done any testing to see if this works. But again, to go back to this idea that it's not really people who are coming in from outside field. He is a PhD trained biologist, and so you know, the kind of, I think the people side of it is
question. So bringing it back to IP, particularly in this circumstance with patents, copyright, and trade secrets, confidential information, could you see any of them actually having a really impactful approach on developing technology or keeping those out from the technology we don't want to use? Could any rationally designed system base itself on IP, achieve those ends?
So I think the intellectual property is a barrier to people accessing these technologies outside, mostly through, at the moment, cost, in that it's more expensive. Right. The problem with biology, if you're not respecting those rights, is that once that material is out there, typically if it's DNA, for example, then it's fairly easy to pass that around. So no, it's quite difficult really to see how intellectual property per se could stop people who want to use it from using it, as long as they can get access to someone who has access to it legitimately. Because again, but until we have DNA printers, as we having worked on the plastic group, us know quite well, you're still relying on actually physically getting hold of material, which again is different from AI. You know, you have an internet connection, you can get hold of that algorithm. Yeah. You can't get hold of the DNA without physics.
Oh, but you can, I mean, wasn't there a while ago this discussion around a printable weapon?
Oh, yeah.
Where you essentially need a design file, and if that's out, then you can, with a printer basically. So.
And the whole technological vision of synthetic biology is built on the idea that at some point will be there. That at some point, if you want an organism / DNA sequence, you can just have it. And the DNA sequence is progressively more so that you can. You do have to send it to a
You know what the current status of at-home DNA printing is, and that kind of hardware? And because I'm part two of that question is because my understanding is that some of the work in that area is aimed at allowing labs in low-resource countries to be able to perform the same experiments legitimately. So is there a tension there about making these designs open or not? About bad actors doing this at home versus great communities doing this in Kenya?
Yeah, there's a little I think. So I haven't seen anything that's brought down the cost of DNA writing.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen anything majorly disruptive that's coming up that is not essentially a service technology. They're relying on many people. But there are people who are using IP and the fact that they have control over licensing to try and restrict assuming they are the legitimate owners, I think it's almost been shuffled out of the debate now, but people are thinking that they are not going to license
for purposes of synthetic gene derived samples. So they are kind of building in restrictions on end use, what they see as potentially risky or irresponsible behaviour into their life. So in that situation, we are seeing in the States IP being used to affect responsible governance, whether or not that actually works or not.
Yeah, that's right. And the weapons enforcement have a very limited depth. Can't impose any criminal sanction, generally speaking, to intellectual property infringement. And that's what you need to stop someone from doing that. If these people committed to doing it, the threat of getting damages on account of cost or standard intellectual property enforcement facility, because they're not really incurring any damages over account.
No, if they released it, they would be criminally.
But that's not through an IP regime.
No, not through an IP regime.
Yeah. No. Yeah, they could. I mean, you would expect they would be. Yeah.
Well, they've broken several regulations. Don't know what.
Yeah. But there must be lots of discussions being made every day not to license to a specific party. I mean, probably even Cambridge Enterprises has cases where they decided not to license specific technologies to certain company or something.
Simply with a view to being.
Yeah, I mean, for commercial reasons certainly, but for other reasons maybe as well. I mean, it would be an interesting question to ask.
I'm jumping somewhere in the conversation, or I don't know whether it's back or forward now. But I think for me the interesting connection between the two areas is that there's kind of been a long embedding of open practices and this kind of discourse of openness that then it probably has nothing to do with actually intellectual property, whether it could have any impact on control in the sense of more about security and stuff, but it's just that it's very difficult to impose controls of any sort when you've had such a strong push of this should be open.
I mean, talking about universities, on the data collection side, there are ethics committees and who kind of have to approve primary data collection and if animals and humans are involved and so on. I mean, I don't know to what extent these committees actually confronted with the question of should we publish the paper or should we release certain data sets? Is that within their remit or?
Specifically in the biology area, if it comes under the National Science Advisory Board of Biosecurity in the US, there is some oversight of that. Well, there's supposed to be some oversight of that.
There's supposed to be oversight, but in reality, if it's considered good science, it should be published. However, I think there was a paper that was recently published where they extracted some of the detailed methodology of the work that they did and published kind of a truncated version of it, if you will.
But again, the point you had earlier was that if you're raising that question at the point of whether you publish or not, it's kind of too late because the information is going to be out there.
Also, actually with patents, can you patent, usually with patents there's the obligation to put all the information in it so that the person can kind of re-engineer it. But is there a possibility to still get a patent but hold back a certain piece of critical information if that's that comes with certain risks? Or
I've never heard of it. I think I remember hearing, not particular parts of the patent, but sort of separate cases I've heard of people, particularly the US government, judging certain inventions of national security.
Yes, and then they don't get that.
And then, they're not published at all. And I don't know how the relationship between the government and the inventor or the company has worked out, but that would probably have to happen regularly, given that they outsource a lot of R&D and things like that, and companies would normally look to make a profit somehow. There's probably come to some licensing agreement. I guess.
But that would mean that the patent examiners have to also undertake some kind of risk assessment.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I wonder if there is a sort of a tick box when you examine a patent, like, could be national security. security of all the specific brands that you can have property on. In theory, and I'm sure there are lots of patents on radioactive material and efficiencies for nuclear reactors and things like that. But yeah, they probably get swept under the rug somehow, but I never really engaged.
It's either, I also work cases where the entire patent and so it's in my patent.
Yeah.
When you're talking about overview at the university level, it reminds me, Lara, of the discussion we were having in South Africa. Not so much about, I guess it's not so much responsible governance, but it's not so much risk as realising benefits and opportunities. And, the decisions like the default being to justify kind of, mostly you're expected at the university or funder level to justify why you're going to pass it. Well, basically to say I'm going to pass it, and that's pretty much enough justification as a kind of commercial route out. But in the context of Global Challenge Research Fund, we were discussing kind of justificational, how you're going to share or open up your IP, or what your IP strategy is for the result of increasing social benefits to the beneficiary country through the GCRF, which is a very different stance to what we currently get. And it's not so much biosafety, but it's kind of thinking about that kind of thing. Yeah, it's very complicated. Places like that do have the ability to enforce IP, but they're just the biosafety, bioeconomy strategy, which has sort of biosafety things in it, but also it's just heavily underwritten by the idea that you must protect what you've got through IP, and that's going to drive the economy. So the idea that you can, the basic idea that we claim all the time, that you can only make money if it's being patented. That's what the line of the government push. And they don't seem to be responding very much to the idea that it's the more sort of drive towards equality within the country. But there's lots of things within the country that they're ignoring equality. They're going for, let's make the rich people richer of whatever color they are. And so that's the IP strategy in South Africa is being driven by a bigger agenda that chooses not to try to bring the whole population along. And universities, which are supposed to be places where they share stuff, are being more and more forced, like some universities here in the UK, having everything that's published, with the notion of, that it's everything that we're facing here is getting squashed into the microcosm, but with much more immediate, clear results for social. But it's very disappointing that they're not. It's interesting, the responsible governance phrase is usually let's stop something bad happening, rather than let's increase the likelihood that additional benefits might accrue. There's an interesting tension also between GCRA funding for science and all other funding for science, which is slap on the IP and commercialized. And I think the GCRS schools have been less clear than they could have in pushing against that. It's inferred, but it's not painful.
Yeah, I mean, on the GCR, because the GCRS are kind of double dipping, at least in biology, they're seeking to address global challenges. They're also seeking to build up the bioeconomy. And you're right, they don't tell you how you can do both and what IP strategy you should be employing to do both.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so it's sort of that murkiness that is underneath the whole of British foreign policy and aid policy in GCRS calls. There's closed is because of that political tension. And also because of there's a different philosophy about economics, about whether you have India or China or South Africa increase its GDP, the overall amount of wealth that it creates, but don't care about about inequality within the country or not. So if you think the wealth of the country could go up no matter how it's shared, then the big country get all happy. Basically. So it's this conversation is happening in a bigger context. Depending on what governments are aware. I like those Ecuador doing about IPF. That would be interesting to have a look at. I'll have a look see. They pride themselves on not being like that. So it'd be interesting to see if that's actually trickles down to how they see that. I hadn't thought about it.
Very naive question, just for more information. For the people who are doing the groundbreaking innovation in biotechnology, what's the funding distribution? Biotech. So how much is state, and if state which, and how much of it is companies, and if so which?
So in the US, I think some ludicrous number, like 80% is funded by DARPA. Don't quote me on the 80. I think there was a Wilson report, but it was absolutely insanely high. For synthetic biology specifically, yeah. Broader biotechnology, not yet.
So there's a lot. I think there's more. It depends which area. I think it's really varied. If you're talking agriculture, pharmaceutical, kind of general production of things in living organisms. I feel like there's more state investment than is recognised. That's certainly true in pharmaceuticals. But then it's kind of like if you read usual accounts, it would seem that the majority of the money is being invested by. I'm not sure if it's majority. Yeah, I don't know figures, but I know there's some interesting papers on tracking through investment in technologies all the way through the kind of life cycle of technologies, and that there are numbers to show that there's more going into the government than most people would imagine at the later stages, as well as just R&D. But I don't know. It'd be interesting.
The figures that I've probably read years ago to biotech and pharma generally is probably shoot. And so 50% private and then 50% both sort of government and philanthropic.
And for particularly for things like platforms and basic features that would actually enable more capabilities rather than just understanding.
So in the UK, I think that's mostly going to be research councils. So building all the different foundries. I think there's 6 DNA foundries around the country, which are multi-million-pound affairs that are designed to be platforms. There was the Flowers Consortium, which also was many millions as well. That was in its mandate was develop synthetic biology platforms for the United Kingdom bioeconomy strategy.
Globally, is many millions a lot or little?
It's a lot more globally.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I don't know. But supposedly, the synthetic biology, I saw something like they're expecting a 20 to 25% increase. Yeah. On the other hand, China is plunging a lot of money in both at the state level, but also the Beijing Genomics Institute, which is kind of like a mixed funding model. They've just announced a new synthetic biology centre headed by George Church, and they're really pounding on it. I think that certainly might be from within the bio community, but it seems like the US and China are really where the big money is going at the moment. And I think it's, without having figures, I would say 50 sounds right. I mean, obviously there are big multinationals that are pouring money into synthetic biology as a kind of way of, usually they see it as a way to give additional capabilities to their current business model, or it can kind of speed up some of the business work that they're already doing. Like the pharmaceutical companies, quite a few of them are also getting into it, speeding up drug discovery pipelines. But it seems like a lot of the company level stuff is quite small scale at the minute still, and still on kind of venture capital funding and going through series, whatever, A to D type rounds rather than being huge. I'm trying to think of any huge company that is entirely based on synthetic biology.
The only one I can think of. Also, you have people like Ginkgo, who are one of the few success stories, I think, in synthetic biology, and they're entirely service-based. So you tell them what metabolic pathway you want, and they build it for you, and then they give it to you. So they don't actually make a thing.
It's incredibly young.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of, there's a murky boundary between what is classed as synthetic biology
and what is just industrial biotech.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And really the industrial biotech.
If you go back like 10 years, there's no maps available, right? And everyone says, oh, all these, billions of dollars invested in maps and nothing can happen. But in the last 10 years, like every new drug approved by the FDA is a map. Yeah, which probably took 30 years to develop. But, and now, the billions of dollars that are invested privately for each one of those drugs would be beginning to be outweighed by the initial profound government public investment that would have occurred during the first 30 years, which I think originally actually came from here as well. And actually wasn't that.
The health of them, which does it say what person is why they invested?
I don't know. I mean, it's not one single project. They just had a massive program of funding synthetic biology centers. But I think, and I don't know this space very well, but I think the problem with dark funding is that you kind of don't know where it goes afterwards. I don't know.
I think some of the motivation is a kind of broad take on what national security means now, and so having agricultural security, because there is agricultural research going on, so the fact that you can maintain your agriculture in face of maybe threats from other countries. I think there's quite a broad version rather than it being what you think of as a kind of military defense application.
Yeah, they would argue that it's in order to defend threats and kind of be able to deal with agriculture and not necessarily
You should definitely say that is not what can't be doing it.
But perhaps somewhat analogously, but on a much, much tinier scale, the BSCL here had a call a couple of years ago for we'll give you money if you can use synthetic biology to develop novel materials. The implication being that was for things like armor, and developing self-regenerating armor and things like that.
There are a couple of places that didn't come back from synthetic biology UK Manchester.
Okay, right.
Be transparent materials. My feeling is that there was a lot of investment originally in the energy biofuel side, and then that sort of looked like it wasn't really going to work as well as everyone hoped, and then DARPA invested more from their side, and then kind of it sort of things a bit mixed. Not like all of the funding, it's certainly at the public from one agency. In the US, it was Department of Energy, I think, the highest funder of this technology space. It was DARPA, but again, it was kind of, it's difficult because of this murky boundary between the rest of biotechnology and this synthetic biology, biological engineering space.
I was wondering, in open source software, I mean, that's special, or that field is already ahead in terms of the open IP discussions in other areas. Are you aware of any paper that kind of typologizes the different types of risk associated with, let's say, open source software?
Okay. No, I don't have a point of the literature. Well, in general, and security economics will probably have some to say about that. Mm-hmm. I guess within, so I guess most software, you just don't consider there to be very many risks, but maybe one area that is of more considerable risk is in digital security and cybersecurity. And there, it's less about code, so you have things like Metasploit, right? That'll just automate the discovery of exploits. And maybe you also want to look at the EFF's recent post on DARPA's Cyber Gun Challenge, which is a challenge to automate both exploit discovery and exploit patching, which starts to go into machine learning. And in fact, one of the teams who participated in that released the code, Mechanical Fish, as open source. But cybersecurity has quite advanced structures in terms of responsible disclosure and publication risk assessment. Again, it's more about findings than about code. But yeah, you contact a vendor when you tell them we found this bug in your code. You have let's decide on the amount of time you patch it, and then once you patch it, we're going to release publish the exploit that existed in your code. And I think these exist also for open source. Right? So just the fact that something is open source doesn't mean that anyone can immediately see that there is an exploit in the code. So there is a responsible disclosure that allows the maintainer of the repository to patch, and then something like disclose that there was a vulnerability.
And the AI that you think is working particularly well, what openness do you think that might be growth that other domains like synthetic biology that are doing that from what's going on?
So one thing that's possibly working too well is the very aggressive reduction of barriers to entry. I think partly this is just because the people who created the field see it as transformative and want everyone to be able to join in. I mean, so you have a nice mashup of a very academic community that cares about the results, but also cares about applying, but also a very strong hacker community who just wants to change things in the world and are very full of academic structure. So there isn't a lot of patenting, there's a lot of buttering with peer review, there's a lot of emphasis on open source platforms, undoing, creating Coursera, and then putting a lot of his time to create the videos that train people up on how to do this, and other educational platforms.
Why do you say that was zero? What do you mean by that?
So as I was saying, that there has been very little discussion of potential misuse of the technology, and currently there are very, very strong norms of everything gets published often and quickly and early and globally, and with no ability to monitor any usage of the technology downstream. And that means that when these things become dangerous, and we think sometimes be very long before they become dangerous, it's going to be very, very hard to implement control measures. They create security problems. But the democratization has been amazing. Right, there are startups all over the world who have this. I mean, there's also the more calculated side of this, which is you can still make a lot of money while still being super open because you maintain the hardware, because it allows you to identify talents and then poach them. And the fact that we have very large monopolies in this field is very important in the fact that they can afford openness because it allows them. So for example, if you create an open source platform, say TensorFlow, and then everyone builds their company on top of TensorFlow, it means that they're much more likely to buy your cloud computer sources. B, it means when you hire them or acquire them, all of the engineers can immediately start working on your internal systems. And C, it means that you get free labor because they're going to patch up the platform for you on things that are not really relevant to you, but then you can benefit from this code.
And then just to reflect some of that back.
Yep.
Saying that. So in some sense, at first looked at this AI and software generally as being very generous, open. It's more open than anything else. But really what's going on is that it's a strong economic argument for that openness basically being a loss leader. You give something for free in order to slot people into your bigger business plan. So it's actually, there isn't some generosity of spirit going on there necessarily. And so when other sectors look at open software and think, or AI, and think, wow, this sector's like really open. And also the image of the kind of radical edge and, you know, that actually doesn't really tie up with how the business models work. So it's hard for other sectors to learn something, at least learn something positive out of that. So if other sectors like synthetic biology or other places want to become as open as open software, it's important to realize that it's not just philanthropic software, and it's only works and it's only dominant because it enables other sorts of business models, which also have their problems like monopoly. That was the one argument. And then the other argument around safety is I've always had a sense that the real bad guys are always going to get the weapons. The really, really bad people are going to get funding from somewhere to create the bad weapons they want to use to use. And the sort of very dark part of the hacker community that simply wants to destroy, very good at what it does anyway, and it's probably way ahead of many others. You know, so the notion that not sharing is going to stop the bad guys from getting the weapons or the dangerous goods. I query whether that's a reasonable assumption. And that what's not sharing, so the blocks that go around things in terms of IP, it cuts out the middle people. The bad guys are always, and the rich guys are always going to get what they want. The middle people are people working in, the amateur hackers working in their gardens or their sheds or garages or the garage. Bedrooms or not. Or all the people in the third world labs that don't intend to be the bad guys. I'm not saying it's not very well, but I wonder whether the notion that keeping things, not sharing through openness is going to prevent the bad guys from getting the bad stuff is realistic.
I guess I would nuance both of these a little bit. So I think I agree with you on both points with caveats. So on the former, I think there generally is an ideologically driven community for openness in software. Lots of people who dedicate their time, who kind of genuinely just give up profits because they want to make this happen. I think there would have been a robust but small group unless much bigger players would adapt some of those services by finding new business. So the lesson to take is not it's all cynical, but rather you need to innovatively find ways for the cynical players to play by the same rules as their ideology. And that's going to be different for different domains. In software, it works because the cost of copying is zero. And that means that there's a whole bunch of business models that you can create that don't exist elsewhere. So that's on the first one. And really understanding the incentive structures and the economics of the thing is the thing that's going to make you be able to do it. And for the second point, I think it's an undertaking, right? So not all countries have nukes, even though some of them really want nukes, or some of them get them decades after they would otherwise want them. Now, of course, nukes are much easier to control than machine learning or technology, but there can be. I don't think you can say the bad guys will always get what they want. You can make it quite hard for bad guys to get what they want. You can also change the incentive structures for people in the middle who haven't decided yet whether we're going to be good, bad, or bad guys.
Just, well, I'm going to speak to undermine what's about end-to-end encryption. And we got to a point in the conversation where we said, I realize end-to-end encryption is obviously amazing today. WhatsApp technology, but a lot of bad guys still send text messages. We're worried about the future, not necessarily just now. Like, yeah, all good bad guys who are very talented, capable. That's not the majority. The majority are technologically not very sophisticated, they're not better educated. I mean, he's talking about it, but certainly I think if you're looking at being concerned about a hacker or when you see them sort of cycle back into product shared so that quickly or can start sending them off, that's a concern. And actually, that wider group of people who may be perpetrators who are not designing it may not have enough knowledge. The small happens there can have a big effect on that population. Some sort of overestimate the capabilities.
Great, well, food has arrived, so I'm going to draw that to a close. But thank you very much to Shahar for coming and talking about AI. It was really interesting. And everybody for coming and asking for questions. We're normally just opposite the room, but some other people are there. So if you turn to the left and walk up a little bit, the tiny table is where all of our food comes.
Before we all run away, I think this is also the last session of the first term of this research group. So thank you all for coming along to this session, but also continuously to the other sessions. And we kick off when in January?
First, I have a sheet. If you didn't get a sheet, pick one.
Oh, you talked about this at the beginning, or?
I just went out late.
Yes.
Yes. And thank you, Raphael, for joining us again.
Thank you.
Thank you, too.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
See you.
If you're sitting on a chair, if you could kind of return it